Coming up on The Real Story, Leora Levy is sitting down with us to talk everything from her Trump endorsement in the U.S. Senate race against opponent Richard Blumenthal to the ideas she wants to bring to Capitol Hill. But first, bringing politics back to the dinner table. Braver Angels is putting the civility back in civil conversations with advice on why and how to have respectful, productive political conversations with anyone. Good Sunday. Good Sunday morning, and thanks for joining us on The Real Story. I'm Emma Wolforst. What used to be talking about politics has become synonymous with fighting, but is there a better way? The organization Braver Angels is all about bridging the partisan divide. They work across the country and here in Connecticut to host programs that don't necessarily change people's views, but instead how they express them and how we hear each other. Elizabeth Dahl is the director of Braver Politics, an initiative with Braver Angels. She's been involved in the organization's mission since she was a teenager and will be telling us more about it. And Dr. Christopher Cluett is also with us this morning. He's a leader in Connecticut public schools and is now teaching education at Mitchell College, while co-chairing the Connecticut chapter of Braver Angels, a mission close to his heart. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris and Elizabeth.
Thank you very much.
Chris, we'll start with a question for you. Can you tell me a little bit more about Braver Angels' origin and mission, especially now we're in election season here?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having us on the program today. We believe very much that the United States is a country that has a great future ahead, and we love this country, and Braver Angels is about loving our country. And with that said, we're at a moment in history, as your viewers know, where there's a lot of difficulty, there's dissent, there's division, and Braver Angels is about trying to bring people together to find common ground.
Of course. And Elizabeth, you're part of expanding this mission, getting elected officials involved in more collaborative conversations. Can you tell me about this new Braver Politics initiative?
Yes, thank you so much for having us. So the goal of Braver Politics is really to take the individual trust building and relationship building that Braver Angels has done in helping voters understand each other to our elected officials across the country, to help them communicate more effectively with their constituents across divides and also with each other. We want to make sure that people are accurately understanding each other in politics, not the least of whom are our elected officials in their communications with us and each other.
And Elizabeth, we've seen some major bipartisan action recently, legislation like the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, but we also see a lot of voting along party lines. Do you think it's important to change that culture? And if so, would that create better laws here in the U.S.?
I think that it's really important for people to think carefully about the votes that they cast and the reason that they're casting those votes. People should be thoughtfully engaged with a variety of perspectives around the political divide and understand what they're voting for when they vote for that thing. Whether you vote along party lines or whether you cross the political divide on a regular basis, I think that it's important that our voters be educated and that our voters accurately understand each other and accurately understand the issues that they're voting for.
Chris, anything to add there?
No, absolutely. I agree. And I think in Connecticut, we are in a relatively good position, vis-a-vis other states in the union. But still, we have work to do, and we are committed to doing it. And it's little by little, step by step. And it's a group of volunteers like myself who are doing it because we really believe that the time has come to make this happen.
Elizabeth, you mentioned voter education there. How can voters educate themselves well?
Our workshops that we put on across the country and our Braver Angels alliances do a wonderful job of bringing people together that wouldn't generally have conversations, who live different lives and think differently and vote differently and have different reasoning, but still want a lot of the same things and seek to find common ground. I think that I would love to have everyone join their local Braver Angels alliance or create an alliance around them. Step out of your comfort comfort zone, talk to someone you wouldn't normally speak with, get to know a neighbor outside your city, get to know someone who thinks differently than you, but that attends the same events you do. And really, I think that's a big part of really being educated across a variety of perspectives.
And do you think that's at all more difficult in a state like Connecticut that tends to lean more heavily blue? Obviously, lots of different states have lots of different political opinions, but when it comes to us here, a lot of these elected officials are Democrat in the same party. At the same time, we have a large unaffiliated and independent voter bloc here. So can you talk at all about how this would work in the culture of Connecticut?
Absolutely. Actually, I live in a culture that's not too different. I'm out here in Western Washington near Seattle. So I live very much in a blue bubble, but with a large disaffected population outside of that, and voters who have a strong independent streak. And I think that Braver Angels works incredibly well here, and that stepping outside your bubble is even more important in those circumstances. It's really not actually difficult to do. Go talk, again, I always emphasize, talk to people that you don't usually talk to. If someone says something you disagree with, ask them why. Don't make assumptions about why. Don't think that you understand what's motivating their vote. If you know someone who thinks differently from you, ask them those questions. If they're your kids' parents, talk to them. Find out at a barbecue. Find out at your neighborhood, at your kids' dance class.
Right. So
anything that you visit.
Yeah, importance of asking questions there. And Chris, do you have any additional tips when it comes to asking those questions?
Well, I think that asking questions is absolutely essential, as Elizabeth said. And I think that, as she's suggesting, listening is very important. Listening to what someone else has to say is important. Oftentimes, people that feel that they're not being listened to become sometimes more likely to cast aspersions on other viewpoints. I think if you listen and then respond to what you're hearing in a gentle way, but in a way that is sensitive to what other people are saying about a particular issue, that goes a long way to helping people realize that, hey, we oftentimes have a lot in common.
And there are any quick examples or quick phrases people should know or try to incorporate?
Well, I would just say that one of the things that Braver Angels is very clear about is that you acknowledge what the person has said. I hear you said this. I'm hearing you say that. And so the person knows you're actually listening, because too often people sit and they wait for their turn to pounce, but they're not actually listening. And so letting people know that you're actually listening, you care about what they say. Might disagree, but you care about what they have to say. And oftentimes out of that comes an ability to find areas, maybe not all areas, but some areas where there's common ground.
Gotcha. And Braver Angels actually has an event coming up right here in Connecticut, correct?
Yes, that's right. On September the 8th at 7:30, we have a great opportunity for people to find out more about Braver Angels. We have two outstanding state representatives. We have Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, who is on the Government Administration and Election Committees, Planning and Development, Transportation, and we have Steve Harding, who's on the committees for environmental issues, education, and judiciary. And they're both willing to talk to each other from different parties, and it's going to be guided by the one of the founders of Braver Angels, and that's Dr. Bill Doherty, who has a background as a professor in family social science, but also he's a practicing therapist, and he is very good and very skilled at helping people come together and talk with each other in ways that generate a mutual respect.
Great. Well, thank you so much again, Chris and Elizabeth, for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. We appreciate you having us.
Of course, well, coming up, we'll sit down with U.S. Senate candidate Leora Levy to talk about her run to defeat Democrat incumbent Dick Blumenthal. Stay with us here on The Real Story.